Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, welcome to our group today. We are from group 2. Here we're going to talk about language maintenance. So we have 10 articles to discuss about. And here we have 5 presenters and me as moderator. The first is Fani Amelia, and the second is Fauzia Alia. The third is Febri Surya Hadi, and then the fourth Anissa Mawadda, and the last Iyama Hiriani. So without further ado, and we don't want to waste more time. So the first speaker is going to be Feby. So you have your time.
Okay, thank you, Indra. So I'm gonna talk about an article entitled Sundanese Children Naming Tradition, a descriptive case study of language maintenance and shift in Bandung. The specific topic addressed as language maintenance by the tradition of giving names to babies. The aims of this study is capturing a contextualized picture of a particular phenomenon where in the study emphasis as simply on gaining an understanding of Sundanese naming tradition in the present day. The method used in this article as a descriptive case study, which is an appropriate way to generate data from large group of people or entities. The findings reveal that there were 55 different names that have been successfully collected from the distributed survey. They were collected from 17 families. These names were then classified into several categories based on its language references used in each name. Based on the finding, there were at least 3 major languages that exhibit in the study, which are Sundanese, Arabic, and various combination of language elements such as Arabic, Sundanese, and Arabic Javanese. There was also one name derived from Bahasa Indonesia. The conclusion, this article may not represent the actual condition of Sundanese naming tradition that correlates to Sundanese in maintaining their mother language at the present day. Thus, the generalization is too early to be drawn. Nevertheless, it is likely able to depict the current trend on naming tradition in Bandung, in which there is a convergently shift from Sundanese language to other languages, particularly Arabic. This may be happened because most of the participants in this study are Muslim. Hence, Arabic, which is believed as the language of Islam and is considered higher virtue, predominantly influence the naming tradition in Sundanese family in the study. Next, please. For the second article that I'm reviewing is the maintenance of Gorontalo language through teaching the local content at elementary schools. The topic addressed is ways to maintain Gorontalo language through teaching it at schools. The questions raised to answer: what are ways to maintain Gorontalo language? Why do number of speakers of Gorontalo language decreasing? Does the young generation play the role in the decreasing of the local languages, or do we have another cause? And are the young generation incapable of using local languages? The method used is descriptive qualitative. For the findings, current problem of local language in Gorontalo research data show that the significant decreasing of speakers is at the age of 0 to 20 years. Compared to the speakers at the age of 21 to 40, most of youngsters can only understand Gorontalo language, but they are not capable enough of speaking the language actively. Families in Gorontalo tend to use Malay Gorontalo in daily communication. This results the exposure of Gorontalo language dramatically low. This affects the level of Gorontalo language acquisition by the younger generation, which is also low. It also occurs in educational institutions, either formal or non-formal. Malay used as the language of instruction in educational institutions so that Gorontalo language cannot be mastered by the students. Moreover, the design of local curriculum for elementary schools more focused on the English subjects. Ways of maintaining local languages. The way to prevent the degradation of the users of Gorontalo language should be implemented through teaching and learning process in formal educational institutions, particularly in elementary schools. Elementary schools are chosen based on several considerations, which are: first, teaching language as early as possible is the best way to increase people's language skills and language awareness. The second reasons, elementary schools are institutions which have much more opportunities to teach local language for students through local content subject. And third, teachers in elementary schools will be able to codify the design of the teaching and learning process by involving intercultural aspect of language. Moreover, teaching the local languages should be implemented by teaching the mutual understanding of culture, not only the aspect of language. It is considered that teaching local language should involve the aspect of culture to reach the goals, which is the increasing of number of speakers of the local language. We should change our common thought that teaching language is only the process of increasing students' language skills. Teaching local language nowadays is quite similar with teaching foreign language because the low exposure of local language. For the conclusion of this article, the number of speakers of Gorontalo language has decreased for a few decades, so that the need to preserve Gorontalo language is inevitable. It is crucial to maintain Gorontalo language, and one of appropriate ways to preserve this local language is the maintenance through teaching the local content at elementary schools. This policy should be implemented immediately by involving cultural and linguistic aspects of the language. Thank you. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you, Abby. What a good explanations. You talked about student children naming traditions and also the maintenance of Guruntal language to the teaching of the local content at elementary school. Okay, now we're gonna move to the second speaker, EMI. You can start your presentation.
Okay, next. Okay, the next article, the title is Language Maintenance by Javanese Families in Desa Sambirejo Timur. Specific topic and address. The study deals with language maintenance by Japanese families. Question raised to answer or aims. The study aims to find out the first, the non-factor effect for Japanese families' language maintenance in Desa Sambirejo Timur. Two, the strategies used by Japanese families to maintain their ethnic language. And three, the reason Japanese families maintain their language. Theory or approach used or method. The study was conducted in qualitative research design with descriptive study which describe the factor affect language maintenance in Japanese families. The findings: parents' attitude to Japanese language influence children's ability in speaking Japanese because the motivation from parents and other family members are needed in maintaining ethnic language in a family. Each Japanese family in Desa Sambirejo Timur have different strategy to maintain this ethnic language. Some of them decided to choose Japanese as their home language so that the vitality of this language is preserved. Parents' motivation and direction in preserving Japanese language also crucial to maintain this language. Parents raising Japanese language interest for children by direct them to arts, culture, and literature about Japanese, such as wayang, Japanese radio broadcasting, and Japanese song. They maintain Japanese language because due to the preservation of ethnic language and culture are crucial as Japanese ethnic society. They are responsible to the maintenance and preservation of their ethnic language. And then conclusions: the study which is concerned with Japanese families' language maintenance, was aims at finding the dominant factor affect Japanese language maintenance. The strategies used by Japanese families to maintain their ethnic language, and the reason Japanese families maintain their language. The factors affect language maintenance by Japanese families in Desa Sambirejo Timur are A. Attitude towards Japanese language. B. Value of Japanese language. C. Identity. And D. Demography. E. Social factor. And F. Visiting homeland. The dominant factor is attitude towards Japanese language. Next, please. The next article, the multifaceted aspect of language maintenance, a new measure for its assessment in immigrant families. Specific topic address, language maintenance among migrants have been researched widely and lie at the core of daily life for immigrant families. Question arise to answer or aims. The prison study reports on a questionnaire developed to assess various aspects of language maintenance, focusing on parent-child communication, theory or approach, use or method. This research is conducted by using qualitative method. Parents and children of 307 immigrant families living in Sydney, Australia, were asked about their use of and preference for language in a range of contexts involving communication between parents and children. The findings. The result factor structure of the language use and preference questionnaires. The parents questionnaires comprise 45 items because all items were similar structure and mutually related in content. A factor analysis with direct applique rotation was performed. Items that were highly loaded on more than one factor were omitted from further analysis and were not in the summary score. The table once present the means, a standard deviations and intercorrection of the four summary score. The factual structure of the data indicates that the parents' report of their child's actual list of language is significantly lower, hence the parents' preference for the child's use. In other words, parents would prefer their children to use L once more than they actually do in accordance with hypothesis once. Analysis also reveals that parents reported significantly higher use of and preference for use of their more more dating in intimate interactions than in the public domains. In accordance with hypothesis 3, the children's questionnaires comprise 24 items. A factor analysis with direct applique rotation was performed. Table 2 present the means, standard deviations, and intercorrections of the three summary scores. The factor structure of the children's questionnaire indicates a difference between actual use of and preference for a language across all listen situations in accordance with hypothesis 2. Next. Conclusions. Patterns of language maintenance among immigrants have been researched widely and lie at the core of daily life for immigrant families. The present study refers on the questionnaire developed to assess various aspects of language maintenance, focusing on parent-child communications. Parents and children of 30, 307 immigrant families living in Sydney, Australia were asked about their use of and preference of language in a range of contexts involving communication between parents and children. Factor analysis of questionnaires revealed distinct dimensions for parents and children. Different samples saw evidence of domain separations with a greater tendency toward use of and preference for the mother tongue in intimate interaction as opposite to the public domains where the tendency to use English was higher. No distinctions emerged across domains between use of and preference for language. In contrast, use of and preference for language in the children's sample emerged as distinct uh, features of language maintenance. With no identification of domain separation, children reported using their parents' mother tongue more than they would prefer to in general and more with their mother and then with their father in particular. Okay, back to moderator.
Okay, thank you to EMI. I think that's a interesting topic to talk about the maintenance of Gorontalo language. And they talk about language maintenance by Japanese families and also the multifaceted aspect of language maintenance. Now we're gonna move to the, the third speaker, Fanny. You can start your explanation.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Next. Okay, the title in the article is Language Shift and Language Maintenance of Local Language Toward Indonesian. Specific topic address, maintenance of the language by preserving the local language that Indonesian has to the next generation. The aim in this study was aimed to investigate the tendencies of daily language used by Indonesians and the preference of the use of local language or Indonesian in everyday life. The method used in this study was descriptive quantitative. The data collection technique was the survey questionnaire. The finding, from a week's printing, the questionnaire, the respondent obtained filling out the questionnaire was 201 respondents consisting of 115 female and 86 male respondents. The result from this study relevant that Indonesians have positive attitude toward the use of local language they have. The data gains show that the majority of respondents prefer using local language to Indonesian in the family and neighborhood domains, the place where they spend almost all their time in. Yet Indonesia is often used in the educational and general place due to the demand and the effectiveness of communication. Importantly, the finding from this study demonstrate that local language have not been saved yet because they are still frequently used in the family and neighborhood area. In the other words, local language are not saved yet maintained to in educational and general place are in the contemporary. The conclusion is Indonesians prefer using LL or I to communicate with their family, neighbor, and in general place. Younger age group of respondents appear to be the Great Britain, British of their language choices. It is far from a shift towards a monolingual society of BI, and it affects Kaili language in Palu City, LL in still relatively safe, perhaps even very safe, since LL demographics still have considerable speakers. The tendency to use I as a mother tongue, the replace LL at home is still limited to be tolerant. Although overall, the average younger generation use I as often as LL outside the home, it is just a common symptom of bilingual society. Next. The next article is the maintenance of Cakap Karo in Kelurahan Sempaka Medan. Specific topic address is the language maintenance to help their children maintain Cakap Karo as their heritage language in Kelurahan Sempakata, Medan. This research aims at describing the maintenance of Cakap Karo in Kelurahan Sempakata, Medan, which was focused on Karones parents' attitude toward heritage language maintenance for their children and their effort to help their children maintain Cakap Karo and their heritage language in Kelurahan Sempakata, Medan. This research is conducted by using qualitative method. Data were collected from 20 Karones parents who had a child or children between the age of 6 to 18 years old in 2019 using the questionnaire and interviews. The finding, the result relevant that all the parents in this study had positive attitude and effort towards their children's heritage language maintenance. Parents' attitude toward the heritage language. Karones parents believe that the maintenance of the heritage language can facilitate their children's positive identify formation. Language is one of the most important factors for ethnic identity in multilingual situation. Heritage language development may help immigrant children define their culture, identify more positively. 2. Parents' effort to enhance children's Cakap Karo skills. Results show that most parents use Cakap Karo with their children at home to maintain their children's receptive competence. Since there is no systematic support from the communication, most parents rely on crutch activity to provide Karone speaking outside the home. Next. People in Kelurahan Sempakata, Medan are multilingual and use bahasa as their medium of communication. They take a stand in using their heritage language in communication with other ethnic groups. This attitude of the community as the effort to use their heritage is called language maintenance. Karones parents use Karones books to help their children maintain their Cakap Karo. They join the community and teach the language to younger sister or brother. Some parents also sing traditional songs in order to teach their children by singing the song at home or in traditional events. The conclusion is Karones parents in Kelurahan Selayang, Medan are very positive toward their children's heritage language maintenance. They believe that high level of proficiency in the Cakap Karo will help their children keep their cultural identity as Karones. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you, Fanny. I think that's a good explanation. So we're gonna move to the fourth speaker, Fauzia Alia. Time is yours.
Okay, next. The title of the article is Language Maintenance at the Javanese Family in Bukit Malintang District. Specific topic addressed: language maintenance at the Javanese family. The aims: this research was intended to investigate the types, the factors, and the reasons of language maintenance. The method, uh, this method, this study was in case study approach by using descriptive qualitative method. The findings, the data were the intensity of using utterance of Javanese language in transcript of the interview to the Javanese early family in language maintenance. The data source of this research was intermarriage, Javanese family. Techniques of collecting the data in this research were observation, interview, and documentation. Data were analyzed by using Miles, Huberman, and Saldana's theory with the processes of data condensation, data display, and conclusion drawing or verification. Result of the research showed that the language maintenance was based on active language maintenance type. Factor of language maintenance was the loyalty to maintain its language although it faced. The reason of language maintenance was to keep ethnic identity. Meanwhile, it did not happen to their fourth child. The child could not maintain Javanese language. He just know that Javanese language as their language should be known as the history. The conclusion, it can conclude that hope the village government to do some activities that can live Javanese language again around the society and make society do not forget their language history. The activities such as set up art gallery first, where the young generation learn about Javanese and culture. Then stage performing art like drama by using Javanese language, practice young generation to be able to be puppeteer in puppet and leather horse performances and speak in Japanese in every change of cultural programs. Next. The next article is language maintenance and language shift among Keralites in Oman. Specific topic addressed: the current status of language maintenance and language shift among Keralites in Oman. The aims or the questions. First, what are the attitudes of Keralites towards their heritage, language, and culture? Second, is there a sign of language shift among Keralites in Oman to any other language? Third, if yes, what are the factors affecting this language shift? If no, what factors influence their language maintenance? Fourth, is code mixing or code shifting a real threat to one maintenance? The method is qualitative method. The findings, the two significant findings of this study are code mixing and multilingualism among the Keralites in Oman. When the former one raises some concerns for the advocates of pure Malayalam, the latter is a progressive result of globalization, which does not pose any threat to maintenance of heritage language. The literacy program organized under the Malayalam Mission banner, a government initiative, has significantly contributed to language maintenance. The role of traditional media is also equally important. The availability of Malayalam newspapers and TV channels, the social clubs named Malayalam Wing and Kerala Wing, social and family gatherings, neighborhoods, all these have contributed to language maintenance. Besides, studying Malayalam as an additional language in Indian schools has saved the second generation from a potential language shift. The conclusion, it can conclude that although they use those languages in educational and work domains or a mixture of two or more language as the situation demands, the ultimate result is not a new language shift, but code mixing and acquiring additional language. With time, Most Keralites living in Oman become fluent speakers of Malayalam, English, Hindi, and Arabic. What is most encouraging is that they also become a multilingual, multi-ethnic and multicultural society, maintaining the heritage language and preserving the essence of their distinct culture, which can be summarized as the transformation of a local Malayalam into a global one. Okay, back to moderator.
All right. Thank you to Toji earlier. That still talks about the maintenance of Japanese language and the language shifts among Keralites in Oman. So we come to the last speaker, Anissa Mauda. Are you here with us? Anissa? Yeah. Okay, it's your turn to explain your presentation. Time is yours.
uh, Language maintenance of Tanjung Pinang Chinese students at Bina Nusantara University. Specific topic address the way of Binus University students on maintaining their Chinese language. Question raised to answer. This research was aimed to observe the language maintenance of Tanjung Pinang Chinese students at Bina Nusantara University. The method of this research is using qualitative method by spreading questionnaires to 30 participants of Tanjung Pinang Chinese students at university and doing face-to-face interview to 5 participants from the total of 30 participants. The findings, the research found that Tanjung Pinang Chinese students at Binus University really value their vernacular and consider it as a cultural wealth that has to be preserved. Even though sometimes they have to be shift their language when they communicate with those who cannot speak it. It's not the reason for them to not maintain their vernacular, frequent contact with family and homeland, and keep using the language in every change are the effective ways to maintain the language. The conclusion is the Tanjung Pinang Chinese student at Binus University maintain their vernacular language through 3 ways. The first way is by keeping contact with family in hometown. A second way is by keeping the use of vernacular in Jakarta with friends who are coming from the same homeland. And the last way is by showing respect towards their vernacular as it is really important for the language maintenance. Next. And the second article is about mother's social network and family language maintenance. Specific topic address. This article reports the result of a social network analysis performed on the mother's primary network of interaction in 15 Mexican American families in the city of El Paso, Texas, the neighborhood of LA Villita in Chicago, and the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. Question raised to answer or aim. The goal of this study was to examine potential opportunities for Spanish use by her children as well as sources of information influence that might shape her views about the benefits and drawbacks of linguistic maintenance in her family. The theory or approach used, this research is using a qualitative method. The data for the original study were collected using 5 instruments intended to gather information regarding perception of ethnolinguistic vitality, attitudes, and motivation toward use and transmission. Family practices that could foster or hinder Spanish development, reported household language use, and mother's social network. On the findings, overall mothers reported using more Spanish than their children. LN mothers reported most commonly speaking Spanish to their children in 86% person of common household Spanish to household interaction, and 76% of Spanish when their children address them. LV mothers reported 60% of Spanish and 45% for their children. Lowest of Spanish was reported in AP with 43% for mothers and 33% for children. The conclusion for this review is results suggest that in this family Spanish transmission is influenced by mother's perception of benefit or cost, mother's participation in network where Spanish is vested with social capital, and mother's linguistic competence. That's all for me. Back to moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to um, Honey as the last speaker. So we have discussed 10 articles with the main topic is language maintenance. So the gaps of our presentation, the whole presentation today is all of the articles are discussing about how to maintain local languages that are still used widely in most parts of Indonesia, whether they use the language in daily lives or in schools. However, none of the articles discussed about specific local language that has almost extinct and hardly used anymore in the society, and what we can do to preserve and how to make people start to use it again as a daily way to communicate, as well as the absence of any discussion of the further impacts that language shifts itself can in turn cause. An example, language death, its process and the efforts made by individuals, social groups, and the government in authority to maintain the existence of a language, which implies language maintenance. So that would be the end of our presentation today. Thank you to all the presenters and the occasions to present this presentation. Thank you.